Welcome to the Secrets of Qigong Masters, the talk show brought to you by Academy of Qidao, the first and only school in the world offering professional education in Qigong and Tai Chi coaching. To find out about the programs offered by Academy of Qidao and to learn how you too can become a certified Tai Chi or Qigong coach, please go to qigongcoaching.com. This show is also brought to you by Mastery Magazine, sponsoring the summits of Qigong Masters. And to enjoy the most recent summit of Qigong Masters that we had this year, please go to qigongmasters.com. Today, I'm delighted to introduce or reintroduce to you Dr. Livia Kohn. She is a Daoist scholar and a foremost expert in the relationship between Qigong and Taoism. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. It's wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we start our interview by exploring the subject matter of the relationship between Taoism on one hand and the energy arts such as Qigong on the other hand?
Oh, well, yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'm sure that your audience and yourself know that Qigong is a modern version of more traditional forms of Taoist cultivation. And Qigong began in the People's Republic of China in 1947 and started as a breathing practice for healing and then moved into all these various dimensions that we're familiar with today. And historically, it goes back to something called Dao Yin, which literally means guiding and stretching. And so it's like Dao means to guide, and it's like guiding the chi, guiding the energy, guiding the breath. And then yin means to pull. It's sort of like the word you use when you're opening a drawer, like pulling something.
So interesting that those words Dao and yin do not mean the same thing as the Dao as the path.
And
or
yin as yin and
energy.
yang. That is correct. They're different characters. So
Right.
The pronunciation is very similar. And the word Dao and Dao Yin actually has the word for Dao path in it, but then it also has another, like an applied Dao kind of feeling. It's like working with Dao. And then the word Yin is just like it's like a bow and arrow, like you're pulling this bow. That's the image of the word Yin. And so it's like a stretching of your muscles. And Dao Yin has been documented since the Zhuangzi. The Zhuangzi, of course, is the second major classical text of Taoism, goes back to about 300 BC. And we do have mention of Dao Yin practices there. And then from there, it developed both into the medical dimension, where Dao Yin, just like Qigong today, is a healing modality and also a preventative modality. So it's like you practice Qigong to strengthen your immune system, to make yourself healthier, and to, if you already have health, and if you have any kind of ailment, you use it to get back to your basic health system. So it's both preventative and restorative within the medical system.
Right.
And then the Daoyin part also gets into the martial arts. So a lot of the moves that's why we do have martial or external kind of Qi practice, the martial type, which also is Daoyin based, these gentle movements and stretches that are then used to interact with others as a fighting technique.
So a lot of Qigong practitioners go gaga about Neigong.
Yes.
But we're talking about Weigong right now.
That's right. This is more the external version of it, but that is also one of the dimensions into which Dao Yin developed.
Sure.
So there's a medical dimension and there's a martial dimension, and then within the Taoist tradition, it became like the foundation for spirituality. So you do your stretches and you're opening, and your whole channel opening as a base for like your meditation practice, your cultivation.
So meditation practice gets enhanced by stretching? Is it what
Yes,
about?
you need your the whole idea in Taoism is that your energy flows through your body, and you're working to make your energy not only smooth, but to refine it, to make it more subtle. And so the Qigong work is the physical, and breathing is like the opening, which then allows you to take your attention inward without having all this ache and pain and this awkwardness and this and you can be calm and you can be cheerful in your body. And then that allows you to do the refinement practice of Taoist meditation.
Interesting. And I would imagine that there are some distinct flavors of Taoist approach to Qigong and meditation as opposed to, for example, Buddhist
Oh, yes,
practices.
it is significantly different.
I've interviewed a few masters who said, "Oh, this thing that you're doing, like just allowing the energy to flow and learn how to be in the flow, that's Buddhist approach. We Taoists don't do that. We make the energy go where we want it to go." Namely, like Dr. Yang Ming, for example, or Mark Johnson. Those are the folks who are kind of on a Taoist end of spectrum, so to speak. But where does the idea of Wu Wei come in? Where does the idea of being natural and spontaneous fit into that approach?
The Buddhist approach is more, it's not so much of letting it flow where it is. As Buddhist is different because what you're doing in Buddhist practice is you're establishing an observer, like insight meditation or vipassana, mindfulness. It's like, yes, you're allowing things to flow, but you're really, the emphasis is on the calmness of the mind, of this detachment, of being this observer, of having this witness consciousness.
So less intention and more attention.
Yes, exactly. Very good. Much more no intention or very little intention and more attention. And in the Taoist tradition, of course, as you all know, it's where the intention goes, the qi will follow, which is an original quote from Mencius.
Yeah, yi dao, qi dao.
Yes, exactly. That is a very ancient, classical quote. You do have that intentional directing of the qi because as you are opening yourself up, you realize, oh, there's a blockage here, or there's like some obstruction here, or it's a little bit rushing here, I feel heat there, and you're working with intention to smooth that out. But the classical texts are very clear about this, that once it's all smoothed out, you allow the qi to do its thing. And there are many stories where people are, spontaneously move into these microcosmic orbit and other forms of qi circulation after they've been able to open up. So you have an intention phase where you, yes, very strongly, you hold your breath, you sweat, you really, move things very intentionally. But then you also come to a phase where you just allow it and see what it's doing.
So you kind of eventually
but you're flowing with it. It's not, the witness consciousness is a different, it comes into it. Under Buddhist influence, there's a form of Taoist form of insight meditation, where you also do have that witness consciousness thing.
There's a lot
that's
of
sort
Buddhist,
secondary.
Buddhist and Taoist syncretism in China and other Asian cultures. So what we'll look at is perhaps developing both the ability to have intention and project energy or cultivate it according to a certain idea, and perhaps also recognizing that, well, where do we get the idea from? Well, basically, we kind of have to rely on our assessment of what's good and what's not good for us.
That's correct.
And if we realize that nothing is inherently good and nothing is inherently bad, plus, how much do we really know what's good for us?
That's correct.
I mean, how often do we really screw up because we thought something was good and instead it turned out to be not so good? So
very true.
If we actually stop pushing the river upstream, so to speak, or where we think the river should go, and allow the energy to flow where it naturally flows, wouldn't that be more of the Taoist approach to let what's natural to unfold spontaneously?
Yes, definitely. There's the more Taoist dimension, the healing, like I said, there's a healing, a martial, and a Taoist dimension to Dao Yin, and also to Qigong today. And so the healing dimension is the one where you intentionally say, oh, okay, my lungs really need work, and you do those particular exercises. But the Taoist dimension is going beyond. You're starting from a position of integral flow, of good health, of inner harmony, and then from there you develop your refinement and your advanced meditation practice. And that is much more a flow thing, much more an acceptance of and a connection to the greater universe.
Indeed.
Taoism always is about the universe. You see, when people ask me, how do I distinguish this practice, whether it's or this technique or this theory or this idea, whether it's Taoist or not, I say, well, if the universe has a central role, it's Taoist. If your physical body is your central thing, it's medical. If your social connection and your ethics is the central feature, it's Confucian. And if your mind and purity of mind and refinement of mind is central, it's Buddhist. So the Taoists always, they take all these things and they make it connected to the universe.
Wonderful. And of course, there is also Tantric Qigong, which most people don't know anything about because they always associate Qigong with China.
Yes.
And Tantric Qigong, by and large, comes from Tibetan culture.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, Tibet nowadays is part of China, but it wasn't always. And obviously has its own culture and its own traditions, many of which got influenced by the Indian culture,
yes.
since Tibet is kind of smack in between China and India, where the idea of Tantra came from, along with Buddhism in general, so much so that it influenced the Tibetan Buddhism to eventually become what we nowadays call Tantric Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And so there are some practices similar to Tantric Qigong practices also existing in China. The Daoists, for example, sometimes engage in some practices that work with sexual cultivation. Montague Chia is known for talking about it a great deal, and some of his students, of course, as well. What other applications of Qigong would you point at that are important or essential? Besides,
other than the health practices,
health,
the
spiritual, sexual, martial arts, and you mentioned also Confucian Qigong, which is about ethics and establishing harmony in society.
I'd say there's like the whole artistic dimension. So where you do the whole creativity part, where you have like both the visual arts and the musical, the audio arts. Mm-hmm. And poetry, language arts. And so a lot of this is about moving with the qi, expressing, again, the cosmic qi. And so many Taoist are great calligraphers, Taoist masters. And actually playing a musical instrument is essential in Taoist ritual. And it's key to all the training in Taoist academies. They all have to learn how to chant, and they have to, learn how to play an instrument of their choice. So the whole musical, the artistic, the ink painting, calligraphy, and then the whole poetic dimension. There's Taoist poetry all the way through. And my teacher way back when at the University of Berkeley, Professor Edward Schaefer, he was a specialist in Tang Dynasty literature. And he became a specialist in Taoism because he realized that he could not understand Tang poetry without a heavy dose of Taoism, because they were expressing their connection to the universe in language that was very particular and that really had this Taoist flavor in it. So he became one of the leading scholars in Taoism coming out of literature.
Fantastic. Well, and I consider that our studies of Qigong also need to be almost like learning a foreign language, because
yes,
how do you?
Yes.
Most people, when they think of Qigong, they just think of doing certain forms or particular techniques.
Oh, it's more than that. Yeah.
There's a lot more than that. It's like if you just learn a few forms, it's like you learned a few poems in that foreign language.
Yeah.
Even if you recite them day and night and become perfect in your recitation. You may even put it to music and sing songs or chants. You may even dance to that music, and it looks good. But does it make you fluent in that language?
Not really.
Not at all. And so that's what happens to a lot of folks who just focus on forms. What would we do instead if we were to learn this language and develop proficiency in it?
Before I answer that, there's also the whole dimension of nature and feng shui. your whole relationship to your living space, to the trees outside, the clouds, the mountains, and there's like a whole dimension there where you're active in your chi practice and where you're connecting to the universe and your chi through landscape. So what can you do to make this all? It's sort of like an internal thing. It's you need to start feeling the energy from within, and getting a sense of where your own harmony is and what nurtures you, what kind of activities nurture you, what kind of food nurtures you. Cooking is a whole other Qigong form.
Yes, indeed.
The Qi of cooking, yeah.
Well, everything is energy.
Yeah, everything is energy. So it's and you have to allow for it to change. It's like, something that may be very nurturing for you this year or today, or was very nurturing last year, may just have no great interest anymore. So there's flow there. You unfold and things unfold around you, and so you can start with very little things, like, what nurtures your soul, really is the key question.
Well, in a sense, it's the key to authenticity.
Yes, it's very much authenticity, genuineness, what the Zhuangzi talks about, the Zhenren, the authentic person, the true man, yeah.
But interestingly enough, as far as I'm concerned, authenticity is not really high priority value in standard Chinese culture, because it's more influenced by Confucianism, that basically doesn't put a lot of emphasis on individuals' authenticity. It's more about, being a good member of society, being pious to your ancestors and all of that. So how do we reconcile the authenticity that comes up as a result of learning how to feel that resonance with energy the way that you personally experience it at this particular moment, as opposed to what society expects of you, especially in China?
Yeah, and here too.
And here too.
And everywhere. And the whole idea of, like, you see the magazines and, this is what the ideal woman should look like. Ooh, I'm too fat, I'm too tall, I'm too this. It's like,
yes, I'm not blonde enough.
Yeah, exactly. You get all these images that are not from you, that are coming from the outside, which is Zhuangzi again talks about this extensively. He talks about how the world thinks of happiness as something that is being defined from, like, wealth and good looks and strength and, reputation and all those things, and how those things are all, fleeting and they change, and, how your true happiness has to come from the inside. And it works its way out. It's the way of the Qi is such that as you develop your own authenticity and your own energetic, a good energetic aura, let's put it this way.
And energy awareness.
And energy awareness, which then translates into the way you are. The way you, say, hey, this is me. There's a song, this is me. I make no apology.
When you think that this is me now, it may be different from the way you were yesterday. Or
absolutely. But yes, but you have that sense of who you are and what is good for you. The Qi works in such a way that opportunities will come your way that allow you to be a very productive and successful member of your society on the basis of who you are. You do not need to twist yourself into knots to be a good social member.
So in a sense, that kind of tells me that Confucius perhaps was not quite right about this whole moralistic standards that everyone should
and
abide
very
by.
Formalistic. Confucius was trying to create behavioral and moral structures that would create like little pigeonholes or little cages or little boxes for people, within which then they could develop an authenticity that would support the society. And the Taoists go the other way around. They don't want the cages and all that stuff. They're starting to come from the inside, from nature, from the universe. And then they find which situation in society is right for you. And so, we have stories that Taoists say, they don't want to serve in office and they want to just sit by the river and fish or just hang out in their country estates. But if you read the text carefully, that's not entirely true. There are Taoists, or Zhuangzi especially, talks variously about people who serve in office, and that's who they are.
And then
There are managers. Taoists can be CEOs, they can be managers, they can be politicians. It is just that's what they express themselves within the society in that manner.
And that's a really interesting approach for a management or even for a political career to be based on the principles of Taoism, for example, Wu Wei, and non-doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are some politicians that practice Wu Wei, like just look at some of the American senators that just do nothing good or flail. What would you say would be a solution that based on Taoist principles or Taoist approach that would actually help more politicians, more managers, more business people to become successful in their lives?
You know how there's this called golden rule?
Yes, do unto others as you wish you.
Yes, as you wish they would be wanting to do. And so the Taoists have a version of this, and there's another version of this, which but the Taoist version is like, do unto others as they would want to do for themselves.
Yeah, that's the platinum rule.
Yes, yeah. So it's like it's the whole Wu Wei thing means that you sort of take a step back from your agenda and just see what is good for, again, the universe comes into it, the greater picture, and then what is good for that particular person.
And how much do we really know what's good for another person?
You don't.
We don't really know what's good for us.
You need to leave them alone. Yeah, so exactly. You need to support, if that's the direction that they're headed in, you need to support that. And so having a basic attitude for, I'm here to support your development without putting a certain agenda on it or certain guidelines or certain rules and regulations, that would help a lot.
Well, that's exactly how I explain the difference between Qigong coaching, this profession that I pioneered 15 years ago, as compared to teaching Qigong or Qigong instruction.
Yes, you're facilitating their own development.
Exactly. So in a sense, this is a more Taoist
much more Taoist approach. Yes, as opposed to handing down specific rules, regulations, and patterns. Yes.
Or forms. You do this form. If you look the way that I look, you're a good student. You'll get promoted. If you don't look the way I look, that's not good. Now, when we look at the Taoist approach to management, to politics, to learning Qigong, what else can we apply it to? For example, if we apply it to, say, health, how would we approach current pandemic and this pandemonium happening worldwide, especially in America?
Worldwide, it's everywhere. Yeah. There's really no place that has not been affected in some way.
Except for American Samoa. So far, they have zero.
American Samoa has zero. Oh, very good.
Yeah,
that's
because they're so far
away
from
everything else. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, what would be the Taoist approach to working with this pandemic or resolving this health crisis?
Well, there's a couple of things. The Taoists are always in favor of, reflection and of calming down. And so we're understanding one way is to look again at the bigger picture is like, the world's been expanding and it's been globalizing and we've been all this growth and there's all this excitement and all this young, that's been happening. And so, the virus is like, wang, we're in yin, withdrawing, calming, stay home, take care of yourself, don't try to run after other things, so understanding that this is like a yin reaction or a yin phase to this huge yang expansion that we've been living in is one way of looking at it. So rather than seeing it as this big catastrophe, it's sort of like a correctional thing. Like the planet says, time out.
So if there is ebb
Calm
and
down.
flow, we used to experience the flow, and now there's the ebb.
Exactly. So you're see it as like something that's happening, and then we're forced to stay home, and so we might as well learn how to be with ourselves and find a new level of authenticity. Say, okay, now I've got this chance to just sit here and see what's really nurturing me. And the other day I was staying with somebody, and they had the opera magazine in their bathroom, and so I was reading opera, and on her last page she always has this column saying what I know for sure. And she hasn't, because she had some health conditions when this corona thing hit. She stayed home. She hasn't left her, front gate essentially since March 11th.
Okay.
And she's discovered that she's really introvert, and she loves it. And she doesn't have to go anywhere, and she doesn't have to address anybody, and she doesn't have to run anything, and she's just
wear pajamas all the time.
I don't know what she wears, but she just says this has been great, and so she's finding a level.
Doesn't have to do her hair, so
right. She doesn't have to submit to all these, and she says she used to say no to 90% of the engagements that came her way, but she still felt like other people were owning her. So she's finding this authenticity in herself. So myself, on the other hand, I used to be home a lot, and I hate it. And I'm realizing I need people, I need to be out there, I need to travel. So, we got in the car and started to move around, and we do a lot of biking. And so you find different levels of authenticity within yourself. At the same time, you need to work on your health. You need to be confident that you are healthy. So you should not be panicking, if this virus is around, even if you're nowhere near it, it still flies through the air. Your immune system needs to be strong, where Qigong comes in. The whole health part of Qigong, a good health practice, good food, regular sleep, all those good things.
Perhaps
that's very helpful.
Prevention.
Anything that is what we call stress prevention, yeah.
Basically becoming more resilient.
More resilient, and then I think that a big factor that causes stress in this situation is the fear of death. And it's like, you know what? You're going to die at some point. And yes, it'd be nice if it was later rather than sooner, but you know what? It's going to happen.
Today is a good day to die.
Yeah, and and Zhuangzi talks about death as a transformation. We're qi, we're energy. So yes, so this particular form, this physical form, this particular mental, emotional constellation of energy is going to dissolve. But as an energy, I'm part of the universe, and I continue. So the whole idea of immortality as a more spiritual continuation of life, or, refinement into a spiritual form.
So those Taoist immortals are essentially those who've figured out that, just like Zhuangzi used to describe how he would sometimes dream of being a butterfly, and he was wondering whether he was a man dreaming of being a butterfly, or actually he was a butterfly dreaming of being a man. So recognizing that this whole life is a dream, and becoming awake to the true nature of what's happening is essentially the key to enlightenment and immortality.
Yes, and Teilhard de Chardin, the French theologian and cosmologist, he said it, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spirits having a human experience.
Indeed.
And once you get to that point and you feel of yourself as being part of universal energy, then yes, there's a virus out there, and yes, you take precautions, and yes, you make sure your health is strong, but it's not going to terrify you. And that takes a huge stress away. I mean, any kind of fear and anxiety and worry and nervousness, it's all bad for the organ. I mean,
So
there's
that
a
will
whole
be
list of these organs, that in Chinese medicine that the emotions will impact negatively. And it compromises, the more fear there is, the more compromised the immune system is. So taking the fear out and getting into that sense of energy, cosmic connection, it will make your immune system stronger.
not only will it make your immune system stronger, it will also change the way you breathe.
Yes.
And in a sense,
absolutely,
then you will not need to practice correct breathing. Your body will be actually breathing much easier because you're not stressed out and fearful.
Yes. And you need to find things that, like I said before, nurture your soul, that you enjoy. And it's hard. Like, I love to dance. I'm a folk dancer. I'm a teacher of Scottish country dancing. It's my total passion. And you have to have like 6 to 8 people to do it, and you are constantly hand giving, and you're in very close contact with these people. So we can't do it in this day and age. So what do? I go bike riding, but I love it. So I find something that is in nature that allows me to be healthy, allows me to be physically active, allows me to enjoy the sunshine. I wave to everybody who's also on the trail, but it's there. It's nurturing.
So there is some joy to be found.
Yes, you have to have joy in your life.
I wonder if anyone has ever tried to develop the Qigong practice that would be based on folk dancing. As a matter of fact, I think that's how Qigong practice is.
There's a lady in Paris. She's from China originally. Her name is Kohn.
Okay.
And she does Qigong dancing, Qi dancing. That's her specialty. And she has a whole institute there, Chinese Culture Institute. She teaches basic Qigong. I did a workshop there in February on my way to just before this whole thing hit.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely. And she wears these long gowns and does all this beautiful flowing dance form of Qigong. And it's not so much, it's more an individual practice, but you could do it with other people.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Perhaps it's something that you could do either by yourself or perhaps with your spouse, or something that essentially doesn't require 6 to 8 people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can do it with fewer people, and we've done that. Yeah.
And of course, there are plenty of other folks who've talked about Qigong dance. I mean, I recall Gary Gallipoli, also known as Francesco, writing a book on that.
Right.
And of course, there are plenty of other people. And there's a whole practice of spontaneous Qigong.
Right.
How is Daoist?
But like it's ecstatic dance, which I love too.
Yeah.
Where you just, the music comes on and then you just move, like 5 rhythms and those kind of barefoot dancing. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I remember one of my first studios where I taught Qigong in Portland was actually the studio called Body Moves, that was organized by the folks who did with the wave and the 5 rhythms, and eventually developed the whole Body Moves style of spontaneous or ecstatic dance themselves.
Great stuff.
Yeah. I wonder how Taoist it is to allow the energy to move you rather than calculating and moving it according to your preconceived ideas where it should go.
It's both. You see, that's one of the beauty of the Taoist tradition, is that depending on the person and depending on where the person is, there are times when it's correct, when it's the best thing for you. Your most authentic thing is to actively guide the energy and to be very conscious about, what you're doing. And then there's times when it's just the time to just flow and let it go. So there's no, it's not like this is lower and the other is higher. It's not like this is right and this is wrong. It's like yin and yang. You need both. And it's the harmony that's the good thing, the power.
So finding some type of balance between having an intention
Yes.
on one hand and having
And letting
attention
go.
on the other hand.
Yeah.
So in other words, the Taoists and Buddhists are not two opposite ends of the spectrum. They actually somehow coexist, and their approaches
Exactly.
may
And
actually.
the Confucians, yeah, exactly. Which
Yeah.
is what classical in classical China, a lot of the practitioners, they would be Confucian officials in their official life, and then they would, after hours and on weekends and retirement, they would do all this Taoist stuff and have poetry and have parties and and do all those more relaxed things. So there's this
So they're closet
balance
Taoists.
there.
Like
Yeah.
officially they were Confucianists, but
Right.
in the clandestine environment they were Taoists.
Not even clandestine. It was just normal, it's just part of the culture. You had your official part, and then you had your more relaxed kind of life.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question about how folks who are dealing with some challenges at this particular point in our history would be able to overcome these challenges. For example, when it comes to, let's say, economical downturn, there is a lot of unemployment. There is, GDP is dropping like a rock. The national debt is skyrocketing. What would the Taoists do to address this and perhaps overcome or even benefit somehow from this condition?
Yeah, well, there's nothing very much you can do about the national debt. I mean, as an individual person, it's just, the Taoists are really about the individual and you as a person, it's like those big political things, they tend to sort of stay away from. But then if you individually change and enough individuals change, you will see a change on the political level. So it's not that it's irrelevant, it's just you're not starting from that point.
Yeah, so it's a ground from
the ground up. Yes, exactly.
Okay,
so
it's a more democratic
kind of person, much more democratic. Yeah,
I see.
Change starts small.
Yeah,
with the individual person, and so what you can do is you can explore different things. You can, like a lot of, we were talking about this earlier among ourselves, how especially in the Qigong world now everything is online, and you explore different ways of having platforms and teaching and communicating and learning, doing it all on a distance level. Some of my friends who are Qigong teachers still work in the park. If the weather, depending if you're in a place that has parks and that the weather is acceptable for doing that, then you could have enough of a distance and you can have your Qigong classes in the park. You can, depending on your financial situation, if you do have a financial cushion, you can start doing artistic things. Can start, and many people say that it's like, I've always wanted to do watercolors and I've had all this stuff sitting in the closet, and now finally I have time to do that. So right. You can, and people say, oh yeah, I finally got time to read all these books. And when we were I lived in Florida, and in the March, April, when they said everybody should stay home, we would go out and do our bike riding every morning, and you wouldn't believe how many houses had all this furniture and couches and things, sitting out on the curbside, because people's like, they had to be home. It's like, oh, this couch is really uncomfortable, because for the first time in however many years, they actually sat on their couch.
So they're getting rid of it now.
Getting rid of it. And so people are renovating their homes. And what was it the other day? Somebody was saying you couldn't possibly get whatever it was some home renovation thing. And you couldn't get it because everybody and his brother is sort of fixing up their yards and their homes, which is great. You make your life, your environment more comfortable. Right. You can also try and look at like different things to do. Like we've ended up going to farms, organic farms, and friends who are farmers. And like this morning, I spent 3 hours weeding. And and I'm outside, I'm connected to the earth, and I usually hate gardening, but now it's something that I'm developing. And I can recognize, oh, this is spinach. Oh, this is kale. Oh, this is a zucchini. Oh, and then we harvesting blueberries and raspberries, and it's just fabulous. So you can, new things that are necessary. There's the farms especially are having major issues because none of the migrant workers are coming. The borders are closed.
Right.
And harvest time is approaching. Another month, you got apple, you got all these, fruit and other vegetables are needing to be harvested. And, you could look at your local farm and see if they need help. I mean, there's stuff you can do.
So there are opportunities.
Yeah.
And of course, there are financial opportunities. I mean,
exactly. And if you go to the farms, you won't get any money, but they'll be giving you, all these nice fresh vegetables and blueberries and raspberries.
Yeah, and you are what you eat.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that is a really nice way to kind of wrap up our conversation for today. Unless you have some words of wisdom, so to speak, to conclude our interview with.
Not particularly. It's just reiterating what I said earlier. It's like use it as an opportunity to be more authentic and to have, do the things that you've always wanted to do and never really had time or energy for. And if there's nothing like that, you might do some artistic things that you wanted to explore. Or learn something new. Yeah, just go online and find some. Oh yeah, I've always wanted to learn whatever, and or go into the community and see. There's still many areas that need help where you can be outside and you can have your social distancing, and you can do good within the community.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much
for
sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us today.
Yes.
Once again, we've just enjoyed another interview with Dr. Livia Kohn on the talk show The Secrets of Qigong Masters, brought to you by Academy of Qidao, the first and only school in the world offering professional education in Tai Chi and Qigong coaching. To find out about our certification programs in Qigong coaching and Tai Chi coaching, please go to qigongcoaching.com. This show is also brought to you by Mastery Magazine, sponsoring the summits of Qigong Masters, bringing to you some of the top experts in Qigong and Tai Chi in North America. Please go to qigongmasters.com to enjoy the most recent summit. Thank you.